If you've been following along Classic WoW recently, you will have no doubt heard at some point of people playing hardcore WoW. Maybe you've even given it a go yourself. It's a simple enough challenge, in theory, of hitting level 60 on Classic era servers without ever dying, and if you do die, you have to delete your character or leave them as a permanent ghost and start again. Through all of Classic so far, back to 2019, I don't think there's ever been a way to play the game that is off meta be so popular, and with the ever-growing surge in popularity, for me it now doesn't feel like an if there end up being hardcore servers anymore, so much as a when. And Blizzard have, over the years, done a bunch of changes or updates based off of feedback. Back in Classic, they added extra Black Lotus spawns, so your average player had a better chance of finding them. They changed drums of battle and TBC, so not everybody in your party needed leatherworking anymore. And they updated Wintergrass to be a cross-server battleground, so it would see a lot more action during Wrath. The other day, the president of Blizzard, Mike Ybarra, aka Quick, tweeted out about having heard of players taking on the hardcore challenge, daring himself to have a go at it and seeing how well it goes. And there have been tons of very old school content creators who have been streaming this game many years before Classic existed, such as Zayu, PS Hero, Zico, Towley, Seiju. The list goes on and on. They're all trying the hardcore challenge and people are tuning in for it. It's exciting to see if and when their character goes down. Just how far are these guys gonna get? It's making Classic back into more of an actual challenge in the way that it really wasn't in 2019. There's no sitting in dungeons spell cleaving, no layer hopping, no boosting, just good old-fashioned level grinding. I do think there's something in viewership growing on other platforms which speaks a lot to something's popularity. If people aren't able to play, they want to watch it too. And more recently, a new patch version was found for seasonal servers, patch 1.14.3.48611. And just to give some meaning to those random selection of numbers, 1.14.3 was the final major patch of Season of Mastery, which came out on April 19th, 2022. Which is rather close to today, isn't it? This patch added significant updates to AQ14 counters, amended materials needed for the war effort, and just kind of set up Season of Mastery for that patch. I'm not sure with the patches for Naxxramas, to be honest. That also underwent big changes too, with all the new items that they implemented. Either way, Seasonal just got some kind of update. Whether that means movement towards a new season, fresh or hardcore, we don't really know, but it is something. So I guess the big question is, when these hardcore servers happen, how should Blizzard do them? At the moment, the mode is regulated via a player-made add-on called Hardcore. This sets the rules for what you can and cannot do in game, and I think it does a very good job at it. But would Blizzard be able to set these rules in stone in a meaningful way? Let's talk about some of the bigger restrictions and possible problems they're going to run into. The first issue you come up with is right in your starting zone, and that's competing for mobs, particularly named mobs on quests. Under the rules, you can level as a duo or a trio, but you must only play at the same time and begin in the same starter zone, or be able to meet up before dinging level 2. World of Warcraft may be a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, but the hardcore rules do not encourage frequent picking up and dropping of groups to get through quests faster. Now, sometimes players are patient enough to form a queue and wait their turn, but it only takes one guy who's the main character for this to really fall over. The funny thing is, waiting for named mobs is that most of the time you would probably have been better off just going to grind less contested mobs. But having that unfinished quest on your log is not a great feeling, is it? Vanilla WoW questing was designed for grouping up. Be it named mobs, elite quests such as those in Redridge, Jinthara Lore, Stromgarde, and so on. Most classes cannot do these by themselves. That's on top of risking doing these solo on a character that if you mess up on, you're gonna have to delete it. But the hardcore add-on has added in achievements, so if you do manage to do some of these harder quests in the game before a certain level, there is a degree of incentive to give them a go just for the flex. I think low-level named mobs might need looking at their respawn timers. Whilst the game was designed for grouping up, it would have never seen this consistently high volume of traffic in lower level zones. All the same, once you start getting past levels 20 to 30, the crowd does start thinning out considerably. Personally, I don't mind the grouping rules that exist. It puts some quests off limit for certain classes, but maybe you come back once the quest is green, as it will still give good XP, or you figure out a creative way to do it through through resetting or by using engineering items or what have you. Also, I don't think Blizzard can realistically enforce the duo or trio rules, and this is still going to have to be done by the add-on. However, there is an area of the game where the rules do allow anyone to group. Dungeons. Before level 60, you're allowed to zone in and complete each dungeon once. Until you reach level 60, then you can spam dungeons with other 60s. Why each dungeon once? Pretty simple. Hardcore wants you out in the world, not farming all the same dungeons for the items and XP, and then going to the next dungeon and doing the same. It does kind of suck you can't spam dungeons or boost friends through there, but it's a sacrifice for the game mode if it's going to make sense. Also, you would definitely get twinked out mages boosting people if you could repeat dungeons, even the lower level ones. People would figure out a way to do it in a safe way and then sell runs. I think one of each dungeon per run is very important to make dungeons feel impactful. It makes preparing the quest list when you're going to go into a dungeon that much more satisfying when you get the payoff, and to just generally stop metagaming. Would Blizzard ever enforce one dungeon run per character? No, I would be amazed if they did. Again, I think this one has to be regulated through the add-on. Similar to grouping, if not part of a duo or trio, you cannot trade, mail, or use the auction house before level 60. You're very much on your own to hope RNG blesses you with usable items, bags, and maybe even a rare or an epic. I'm just gonna say, when I got 3 greens with agility on in the space of half an hour on a hunter, that felt luckier than any raid drop I've ever had. I think it's important here that there are some kind of restrictions on trading, as it helps keep your character at a reasonable power level. I can guarantee you that if people can trade at lower levels, they will trade cross-game. What I mean by this is people will buy gold on hardcore realms for gold on wrath realms or gold on retail realms, which is allowed, by the way. This will also inevitably bring bots to hardcore realms because the value of gold there will be absolutely ridiculous. Even if they're able to scrape together 1 gold per hour, it might be worth it, you know. Imagine running a dead mines and the rogue says he'll pay you 25 gold to pass on Cruel Barb. I guess he just enjoys farming, right? Oh, and in case you're wondering why not just trade it, the 2-hour trade window only exists for raid gear. Or what if I was to get level 60 and I want to keep an insurance character about, so I go and enchant a skinning knife with spell power or a random common weapon with Crusader. Things like that are a huge power boost at a low level, which will make me way more powerful than I should be. Is it fair to do that since I've worked towards those items and got level 60? Or does it defeat the point of the challenge by making an overpowered low-level character? Again, personally, I think the add-on has it right. Whilst trading makes sense at 60, before it, I worry that it's going to have negative impacts due to how important gold is, botting, and overpowering content relative to your character's level. Now, Blizzard might actually do this. I imagine it's a lot simpler of a thing to implement as opposed to one dungeon run or restricting group size. The only problem is that if duos and trios exist, they can trade, so yeah, it's not quite that simple, is it? The next one is a big one for me, and in my opinion, one of the most important things to consider: PvP, flagging, and griefing. So, hardcore's played on PvE realms for what I hope are very obvious reasons. Having people who play the most have free reign to attack anyone in contested zones would be a kind of dead on arrival game mode. Now, I'm just gonna say it, PvP is incompatible with hardcore with how the game is currently played, and unless both parties fully expect to be PvP flagged, it just shouldn't even be possible. As much as the player looking to flag themselves is taking a risk, no one is ever flagging and just going about the game as normal. You already know they're trying to get someone else to flag for PvP by accident because they want the content. Why would you choose to be attackable by anyone of any level whilst questing? You wouldn't. But what if we did something like it is in retail with war mode, where you opt into PvP in a major city, then gain extra XP out in the open world? I mean, it still has problems. If I was a bit of a degen, I could go and camp enemy quest givers at a low level, and people that are not flagged could not stop me doing that unless they themselves went back to a major city to flag and came back. What if people who PvP flagged had their own layer? I mean, that could work a little better, but the people with the most playtime will absolutely gatekeep low level zones or just camp random caves where it's hard to escape. I think PvP could work. It could even be quite fun, but it needs an enormous overhaul of how Classic is played. I could talk about this for a while, but in short, you would need things such as level restrictions for who you can attack on a zone by zone basis, grace periods upon entering a new zone for the first time so you can get situated, XP caps on a daily or weekly basis, keep the level disparity small and the focus on PvP, lowering the duration of certain CCs so they can't last 30 or 40 seconds. You probably have to give stealth effects a duration and a longer cooldown so it's more tactical, not just I pick every single fight I want. I don't think you have death equals delete, but death equals XP penalty or something of that sort. Again, it's about PvP. A single loss being a reset I think is too harsh. Some kind of honor system of single combat to prevent the larger group from winning every single battle, designated no PvP safe zones such as inns, break add-ons such as spy that inform you players are nearby, and so on. Basically, for it to be decent, it would need a ton of custom changes. But even on PvE servers, PvP has potential issues which Blizzard must consider, such as when you drop an Infernal, it will attack any nearby target, ally, or enemy. Right-click by default is start attack and interact, meaning you can accidentally click flag players when going to collect something. Players can mind control enemy mobs, causing them to count as enemy faction members. Interaction with unavoidable faction guards, such as Alliance going down the lift to 1000 needles. Certain quests auto PvP flag you with no warning, such as the final part of The Missing Diplomat, and many more. This is an area where I believe Blizzard does have to step in and do some work. Hardcore is already a punishing challenge. If and when you fail and die, it has to feel as though you understand why and that you realize you made a mistake and you can learn from that in the future. If Terramus does a drive-by and one-shots you in Elwyn, if an Infernal gets dropped on your head in Darkshore, or if there's a rogue lurking on an Iron Vein, those aren't going to feel like fair deaths. The game mode is about how can I reach 60 without dying, not how creatively can I waste other people's time, and it needs to cater to the right crowd. I'm sure that when hardcore servers happen, the popularity will only grow exponentially higher for this game mode, but looking at some of the current rules, I think there is a limited amount of things that I would realistically expect Blizzard to commit to, and that's not even because they'd be too lazy to do so, they'd just be overly complicated to achieve, and players would almost certainly just find more loopholes either way. I believe that hardcore started from the community, and it's primarily them that will continue to carry it, even with official servers. It could very much just be Blizzard need to disable the ability to resurrect, look into stopping well-known griefing methods, and leave the rest to the players. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time an add-on has completely changed how you play the game. What about all the things for people who like collection, add-ons for role players to explain their backstory, mythic dungeon tools for planning dungeon routing, Warcraft logs setting pass rules, and so on? It might even be better for both parties just to be more hands-off with this. The only issue with more players is that you inevitably get more bad eggs who don't want to follow an add-on because it's dumb, yet will still insist playing on the hardcore servers. But that's just me and what I think. What would you like to see in regards to hardcore servers? Would you want more interaction and rule making from Blizzard, or are you happy with how the hardcore community has regulated the challenge so far and you want them to carry on? Let me know below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.